You're not invited to the wedding. Please don't make this harder. That was the message. No greeting, no warning, just those words flashing on the screen as I stood at the ironing board, smoothing out the creases in Liam's dress shirt, the same shirt he'd asked me to press for his rehearsal dinner. I stared at the screen, the iron suspended in midair, steam coiling up toward my face as if to fill the silence for me. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. I called him right away. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. A few moments later, a new text popped up. It's Serafina's day. We've decided. We decided. I set the iron down gently. My hands were shaking. I reread both messages, then again and again. I felt like the room was swaying slightly, like I'd stepped off a curb I hadn't seen. I sat down on the edge of the sofa. The silence in the house felt heavier than usual. No television, no kettle, just the faint ticking of the kitchen clock marking the exact moment my son told me I didn't belong at the most important day of his life. I picked up the phone again, typed, "Why," then deleted it. What could I say that didn't sound like begging? Instead, I texted, "I thought I was assisting." No reply. I'd picked out the florist, spoken to the venue, sent over my guest list, just 6 names, all from our side. I even paid the deposit on the catering service because they were short that week. I didn't do it for credit. I did it because I loved him. But maybe love doesn't count when it's no longer convenient. I stood up, folded the shirt, placed it on the back of the dining chair. I wouldn't need it anymore, and apparently, neither would they. I walked into the kitchen and deleted the wedding reminder from my calendar. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee getting cold and tried to remember the first thing I ever gave up for Liam. It might have been the vacation I canceled when he got strep throat in 2nd grade, or the overnight shifts I picked up when he wanted to join the travel soccer team. Eventually, it all blurred together. Nights, years, holidays. I worked 3 shifts a day for months when he was in college, 2 jobs when he started med school. 1 car between the two of us. He had it during the week. I took the bus on weekends. When he graduated in that blue robe, I stood in the back of the crowd. No one noticed me crying except the mother of another student, and she handed me a tissue without saying a word. I never told Liam that I'd sold my engagement ring to help with his down payment on that condo. He was already so proud of himself. I didn't want to dull it with sacrifice. Then came the engagement. I was thrilled when he told me about Serafina. "She's sharp," he said. "You'll love her." I tried. I truly did. Brought her flowers when they first came for dinner, offered to assist with the planning, just a little guidance, no pressure. When the contracts came, I co-signed a few to help them secure the better rates. The venue manager knew me from my nursing days. I'd saved his wife's life in the ICU. A handshake and a signature. Later, the deal was done. Serafina had smiled and called me her wedding angel. That was 4 months ago. Now I'm told my presence would make things tense. As if love ever made things easy. As if love isn't built on tension and release, sacrifice and silence. I gave without keeping score, but apparently someone was keeping track of where I stood, and the verdict was in. Outside. I opened the drawer where I kept the wedding binder, the one with receipts, vendor contacts, timelines, and ran my fingers across the labeled tabs. They really had no idea whose name was actually on everything. I'm a woman of 52 years, and I was used to providing for my family. My son, Liam, and my daughter, Haley, live in the state of California. I called Haley the next morning. If anyone would understand, it was her. She'd always been more observant, more tuned into undercurrents than Liam. When she picked up, her voice was quiet, hesitant. "I know you're hurt, Mom," she said before I even asked, "but maybe just let them have their moment." "Serafina's under a lot of stress, so I'm the stress," I said flatly. Haley didn't answer right away. Just a soft exhale. Then it's their day. I hung up before I said something I'd regret, or worse, something I'd have to apologize for later just to keep peace that was never mine to hold. That afternoon, my phone rang again. This time it was David. I hadn't heard from my ex-husband in nearly a year. But there he was, calling like nothing had happened, like we still exchanged holiday cards. "Hey, Coral," he said too casually. "Hope you're doing all right. Listen, I'm just reaching out to collect everyone's part for the group wedding gift. We're pooling together for a down payment surprise. Something special for Liam and Serafina. I didn't say a word. It's $2,800 per person, he continued. Just transfer it to my account whenever. I'll handle the logistics. I blinked. David, I'm not invited to the wedding. He paused and scoffed like I'd brought up the weather. This isn't about that, Coral. Don't be petty. It's for the kids, for family. My jaw clenched so hard I thought something might crack. Family, that word? They only used it when they needed something. I won't be contributing, I said evenly. He chuckled like I'd just told a bitter joke. You sure you want to play it this way? But I had already ended the call. No goodbye, no explanation. I sat there in the stillness, staring at the wedding binder on the table. Not one of them had asked if I was okay. They only called to see what I'd give next. They didn't realize I'd already given the last thing I ever would, and I still had the contracts to prove it. I opened the wedding binder slowly, like it might burn me. But inside, it was all neat columns, paper clips, tabs, timelines. Everything Serafina wanted scheduled, confirmed, secured. And nearly all of it, I realized as I flipped through, carried one name at the bottom. Mine. Venue, Coral Moan. Florist, Coral Moan. Catering, Coral Moan. Linens, music, chairs. Every signature line held my name. Not Liam's, not Serafina's. It hadn't mattered when I offered to handle the paperwork. It was easier that way, I told myself. Fewer hoops, better trust with the vendors. I knew people. I could move things along. But now, looking at those signatures, the meaning had shifted. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and pulled out my phone. I dialed Naomi, a friend and lawyer, and the one who helped me draw up my own living trust last year, after a bad fall reminded me that no one was promised time. She answered on the second ring. Hey, stranger, I need your eyes on something, I said. Wedding contracts. Yours? She asked, surprised. My son's. I brought the binder over that afternoon. We sat on her porch while she flipped through each page, her expression sharpening as she read. When she got to the venue clause, payment due 7 days before the event or agreement voided, she tapped it twice. This isn't just binding, she said. It's leverage. I swallowed. If they don't pay, you can cancel legally. Refunds come back to you. Services revert to your name. I nodded slowly. This isn't revenge, Coral, she said, looking me dead in the eye. It's protection of your time, your labor, your value. You didn't ask to be erased, but you don't have to fund it. I didn't speak for a long time. I just ran my fingers over the signature line on the last page. The ink had long dried, but now it felt freshly written. Naomi closed the binder and slid it back toward me. Whatever you decide, she said, you hold all the cards. And for once, I believed her. That night, I poured myself a half glass of wine, opened my laptop, and turned on the small desk lamp in the corner of the room. No music, no distractions. Just the sound of keys tapping and the quiet breathing of a woman who had finally drawn a line. I started with the venue. To whom it may concern, as the contracted client for the event scheduled on August 30th under Claramone Events, I'm writing to notify you that the final payment will not be made per the terms of our agreement. Kindly consider this official notice of cancellation. Kindly process the return of the initial deposit to the business account on file. Thank you. I reread it twice. No bitterness, just business. Then came the florist, the caterer, the linen rentals. 4 total emails, each one specific, calm, and legally sound. I copied the relevant clauses from the contracts, highlighted the sections about payment deadlines and refund policies, and attached them all in PDF format. No room for confusion.
When I finished the last one, I sat back in my chair and stared at the drafts lined up on the screen, each a string of words, but together they meant something much louder. I scheduled them all to send at exactly 9 a.m., 7 days before the wedding. Not as a threat, not even as a warning, just a quiet removal of myself from the machinery they assumed would run without me. Then I closed the laptop, pushed it gently to the side, and folded my hands in my lap. There was no shaking this time, no tears, just a slow settling of everything inside me. I didn't feel like the villain. I didn't even feel triumphant. I felt still, like something had finally stopped spinning. Upstairs, in the back of the closet, my dress for the wedding still hung in its plastic wrap. Pale green, simple, chosen carefully to avoid upstaging anyone. I left it there. The next morning, I opened a new browser tab and typed one word into the search bar. Maui. At exactly 9 a.m., the emails left my outbox without fanfare. No dramatic music, no thunderclap of justice, just a soft whoosh as each one was delivered to the inboxes of people who probably thought I was still quietly in their corner. By noon, the phone started buzzing. First, a voicemail from the venue, Mr. Harrison, polite but firm, confirming receipt of my cancellation. He said he was sorry to lose our business and hoped we consider them again in the future. Then the florist called. I didn't answer. They followed up with an email, kind, confused, offering a rescheduling option. I ignored them all. I didn't owe anyone an explanation anymore, least of all the people who had written me out of their story but still expected me to hold the spine together. I packed slowly, intentionally. A linen dress, walking sandals, 2 books I hadn't made time to read. I rolled my clothes instead of folding them, something Liam taught me years ago during our first mother-son trip to Chicago. I nearly smiled at the memory, but the warmth faded just as fast. I placed the boarding pass in the outside pocket of my carry-on. Flight to Maui. Departure Friday morning. The same morning, Serafina had once scheduled her final walkthrough at the venue, the one I used to be invited to. As I zipped the suitcase shut, something shifted in me. Not resentment, not even grief, just relief. No more waiting to be invited. No more pretending that shrinking myself was a noble thing. The ocean stretched out in front of me, endless and unapologetic.
The breeze carried just enough salt to sting, but not enough to hurt. I sat barefoot in the sand, fingers wrapped around a warm cup of coffee from the cafe across the street. My phone buzzed beside me on the towel, but I didn't rush to check it. I already knew what day it was. Wedding day. By the time I picked it up, the screen showed 93 missed calls. I scrolled through the voicemails. Serafina sobbing, Liam shouting, my ex-husband's voice like a clenched fist. The venue had released the space. The caterer never arrived. The florist refunded the flowers to my account. Someone, somewhere, had tried to pull it all together last minute, but I knew it wouldn't work. You can't rebuild a house the morning it's meant to be lived in. The last voicemail from Liam was quieter. Not calmer, just tired. Mom, please, I don't know what happened. Serafina's in tears. I don't know what to do. You've got to call me back. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I took a slow sip of coffee and watched a family further down the beach helping their kids build a lopsided sandcastle. The mother laughed as the smallest one collapsed the whole thing with one excited kick. No one yelled. They just started again. That used to be me, always rebuilding what someone else knocked over. But not this time. This time, I let it fall. I tucked the phone back into my bag, still bussing, and turned my face toward the sun. The light didn't ask anything from me. It just warmed my skin like I still belonged here, in the world,
in my own moment. I stayed on the beach until the breeze turned cooler and the family started packing up. Then I gathered my towel, shook off the sand, and started walking. My phone buzzed again in my bag, a fresh wave of messages hitting. I didn't check. I already knew what broken sounded like, and it no longer had anything to do with me. I let the phone ring twice before answering. It was Liam again. His voice hit me like a wave the moment I said hello, tight, frantic. Serafina was sobbing in the background, her voice high and panicked. I couldn't make out the words. "You sabotaged us," Liam shouted. "You ruined our wedding." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I waited a moment, then said, "No, Liam. I removed my work from people who erased me." He went quiet, just long enough for me to hear Serafina's cries shift into something angrier, accusatory. "You told me not to come," I continued, calm, "so I didn't. You said there was no place for me at the wedding. I honored that." "That's not what we meant," he said, but it sounded weak. "You blindsided us. You didn't even give us a chance to fix it." "I gave you everything else," I said. "Time, money, labor, support. I built the entire foundation, and you told me to leave before the celebration. That's not a miscommunication. That's a choice." "She didn't mean it like that," he snapped. "You know how Serafina gets when she's overwhelmed." I closed my eyes. Of course. Excuses, passes, soft landings for everyone but me. "Contracts are contracts," I said. "They were in my name. The services were under my business. What you all saw as gifts were business transactions with my signature at the bottom." "You sound like a lawyer," he muttered. "No," I said quietly. "I sound like someone who finally learned that silence doesn't mean servitude." Serafina screamed something in the background, something I couldn't fully catch, but didn't need to. I'd heard enough for years. "Mom will never recover from this." I didn't respond to that. I wasn't there to cushion the fall anymore. I heard my own breath steady, not trembling. This wasn't personal. Well, neither was this. I ended the call before he could answer. I placed the phone face down on the nightstand and pulled the hotel curtains wide open. From my hotel balcony, I could see the ocean folding into itself over and over. The tide, a steady rhythm that made no demands. Somewhere across the Pacific, they were probably picking through the ruins of what should have been a wedding, or maybe still trying to salvage it. I wouldn't know. I hadn't checked my phone in hours. When I finally did, there was one new message from Liam. Just 2 words. "You win." I stared at it for a moment. No punctuation, no apology, just blame disguised as surrender. I deleted it without replying. Winning had never been the goal. I wasn't trying to score points. I just wanted to stop bleeding. I put on my sandals and left the room. The late afternoon sun was soft, almost golden. I walked until I found a small chapel nestled between 2 palm trees, quiet and open, the kind of place you don't find unless you're not looking for anything anymore. Inside, there was no music, just stillness. One woman sat near the back, head bowed. I didn't disturb her. I moved to the front, lit a candle, and stood there a moment. I didn't pray for forgiveness. I didn't even pray for peace. I just let the heat of the flame remind me I was still here, that I could choose myself without apology. They had built a wedding without my name on the program. No seat reserved, no mention of the woman who signed the contracts, paid the deposits, picked the linens. I was supposed to be invisible, useful, but forgettable. But in removing myself, I'd become visible in the one way that couldn't be denied. The chapel door creaked behind me as I walked out, the wind lifting the hem of my dress. I felt lighter,
Not because anything was fixed, but because I'd stopped trying to hold up things that were never meant to include me. Back in my room, I poured the last of the wine into a glass, stepped onto the balcony, and raised it to the horizon. Tomorrow I'd go home, but not back. Back in Savannah, the air felt heavier, thicker, with the kind of silence that used to sting. But not anymore. I unpacked, slowly, folded everything neatly, then reached into the back of my closet and pulled out the dress I'd bought for the wedding. Pale green, soft fabric, still wrapped in its garment bag. I hadn't even taken the tag off. I stared at it for a moment, then placed it carefully into a donation box, along with the heels and clutch I'd planned to wear. Someone else could make memories in them. Now someone still invited to the places they helped build. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and a single sheet of stationery. No email, no grand speech, just a note. Brief, measured. You uninvited me from the wedding. I wasn't trying to be a guest. I was the one who built it. You tore it down. C.M. I folded it cleanly, placed it in an envelope without a return address, and walked it down to the mailbox. No one would write back. That wasn't the point. There would be no more phone calls, no more explanations, no awkward sit-downs to clear the air. Whatever they'd wanted me to be, quiet, convenient, invisible, I wasn't anymore. I wasn't angry. I was done. Back home, I made myself a cup of coffee and opened the windows. The afternoon sun stretched across the floor, warming the walls that used to feel so cold. I sat at the table where I'd once planned their wedding down to the minute, and now I planned nothing at all, and it felt good. Later, I walked through the neighborhood, past the church, the grocery store, the old brick homes with flower beds in bloom. No one looked twice. I liked that. No spotlight, no drama, just a woman who had once been a pillar, choosing, finally, to stand for herself alone, unshaken, and utterly free. A year had passed, and the air in Savannah no longer felt heavy. It smelled of rain-soaked earth and blooming magnolias, not stale regrets. Coral sat at a new desk in a small studio she had rented on a quiet corner. The room was bright, with high windows and a single brass plaque on the door that read, "Clear Signature Consulting." That's what she called her new venture. The money refunded from the vendors had been substantial. It could have funded a lengthy vacation or a full home renovation, but she didn't use it for either. Instead, she invested it in something she felt was far more important, in protecting others from the same invisible losses she had endured. Her company helped individuals who, like her, had been unknowingly signing over their time, effort, and resources for projects that they believed were acts of love, but were in fact one-sided business transactions. She drafted contracts, clarified rights, and established boundaries. Her first client was a woman who was about to pour her life savings into renovating her bachelor son's house. Coral helped her secure an agreement that ensured her investment was legally protected, giving her a stake in the property. Her daughter, Haley, eventually joined the business, leaving her unfulfilling corporate job. "Mom," she said, "you don't get it. You didn't just start a business. You created a new language for our family." As for the wedding, it never happened. Liam and Serafina couldn't fix the collapse. The chaos of that day didn't simply fade. It exposed cracks in their foundation that were too deep to be papered over. In their last conversation months ago, Liam didn't scream or apologize. He simply said, "We called it off, Mom. She wanted to start over, but we couldn't agree on who would pay for it." And with that, the story of their wedding was over. There were no pleas for help, no further accusations. He simply stated a fact, one that had finally come to be. Coral felt neither triumph nor sadness upon hearing the news. She simply took a slow, deliberate breath,
closing her eyes as if to put the final period on a sentence she had long stopped writing. Today, as she sat at her desk, a small package was delivered to the studio. It was wrapped neatly in brown paper with only her initials, C.M., scrawled across the top. Her heart didn't race, it just pulsed with a steady, peaceful rhythm. The package wasn't from her daughter, it was from Liam. She unwrapped it slowly, revealing a small potted lemon tree. It was barely a foot tall, its leaves a vibrant, healthy green. Tucked into the soil was a small card. It was not a grand apology, but something far more unexpected and powerful. The card simply read, "A new kind of foundation." He hadn't apologized for his choices or their hurtful words. Instead, he acknowledged her choice. He saw her now not as the woman who had only ever given, but as someone who had finally built something for herself, the fruit of her own labor planted in her own soil. Coral placed the lemon tree on her desk next to a stack of signed contracts. Its presence was a testament not to forgiveness, but to understanding. It was a silent acknowledgement that their relationship would no longer be built on sacrifice, but on something much stronger. Two independent people living separate lives who had finally learned to respect each other's boundaries. The silence that filled the studio was not the heavy silence of a lonely house. It was a productive, promising quiet. The lemon tree sat in the sun, soaking up the light, and for the first time in a long time, Coral felt that she was doing the same.